and welcome to A Star to Steer Her By. My name is Jake, and I'm joined by...
Chris.
Ames.
And Caitlin.
This is episode 50.
Woo!
As well, it is our 1 year anniversary. We started this just about 1 year ago.
Whoa.
Yeah. I know, isn't that crazy? And
We've
this week,
survived.
We've to this point, we
By
survived...
which you mean Ames hasn't killed Jake or I yet.
Yes, we
None of you
survived
will
the
put your red
animated
shirts
show.
on. And
So this week we will be talking. We've passed through the thicket, the dense, horrible forest of the animated series, and we're finally moving on to the original series movies, where we have the return, the much anticipated return of Walter Koenig as Chekhov, but as well we see some other familiar faces in this film. Though.
all with different, weirder hair.
And alas,
Although Rand's hair is less weird.
That's true. She looks good.
No Moress and no Erics, though.
What a
Yeah,
shame.
they got fired. They got fired off that ship.
Got fired out of a fucking photon bag.
So creepy.
Um,
Ooh, that was good.
Okay, so Star Trek: The Motion Picture. This is the first of the 6 films featuring the original cast, and again, the whole cast has returned. And we also have a couple new additions to this group. There's Decker. Captain Decker, soon to be temporarily reduced to commander because Kirk's a jerk. We also get Ilea, the very bald and sexy Ilea. And Fivehead, Mr. Fivehead.
Mr. Fivehead, yeah.
Like 17 heads.
That's
so many heads.
Vulcan science officer who dies horribly. But at any rate, let's just quickly, if it's...
Oh, fuck. Is he the one that gets it on the fucking transporter?
That's why you never see him again.
That's why we never see him.
Oh, I figured he just couldn't get there in time because he was making excuses about timeliness. Well, who was the other person that he fused with or whatever?
Brando.
Some woman. But yeah, that's why Kirk says, like, when you're passing along your condolences, you have to ask the Vulcan Council for his contact info.
So, we'll do a brief summary here. So, the ship encounters a probe that is trying to find its creator. Its creator's name is Roy Kirk. And that's the wrong episode.
I am no man.
So, what actually happens
this unit is perfect.
Yes, the starship, the Enterprise returns. They encounter a computer that believes that the Enterprise is another computer and that the crew inside of it is like an infestation or a race of slaves. And then they have to tell the computer that humans are not slaves and that they should be able to come to the Shoreleaf planet because... Oh, wait, no, that's also the wrong episode. I'm sorry. There's a probe headed towards Earth to talk to whales. Fuck!
The Jake unit is doing a terrible job.
Yes. No. So actually,
means rock.
Yes. This movie is. The plot to the film is quite familiar if you've been paying attention. It definitely borrows heavily from other stories, but essentially the deal is there is a giant cloud of shit headed towards Earth. It's destroying everything in its path, including some Klingons.
It's also like that fucking animated series episode too, right? With the sentient cloud that like keeps killing people?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, one of our planets is missing.
Yeah,
that's
one of our
it.
planets. And the Enterprise being the only ship anywhere
near Earth,
and the only ship between Earth and Klingon space, it has to be put into service unfinished because they're getting a refit, and then they go out and they try to beat this cloud. And long story short, it turns out that it's basically Nomad, and it's going back to find its creator. And whoops.
LOL, whoops.
But it is in fact Voyager 6, which was like a space probe, and then a robot and a person have to fuck to save the day.
He was okay with it.
I didn't really understand the ending of this movie. Like, why did the two of them? Well, we should, because I don't understand
Why
it.
don't we begin at the beginning?
Let's begin before the beginning.
Oh.
Because in retrospect, it's a fucking miracle this thing even happened at all, because all the fucking administrative chaos that led up to deciding, okay, let's do a movie, like, was so drawn out and awful that the fact that the motion picture occurred is, like, fantastic.
When you say fantastic...
But well, I like it though. So that's the other thing. Like,
true,
I like the movie for what it is. Yes, it has its faults. Many faults. Most of the faults are post-production's fault though. So, and a little bit of the directing, and a little bit of Shatner, and a little bit of some other stuff. The costumes. We'll get to those. We'll get to those. But no, so like they've been talking about doing a movie since, even during like animated series, even I think earlier than that saying we should do a movie. Like Roddenberry pitched a weird one about sentient cows and whether or not we can like eat sentient cows if they have sentience. That one obviously didn't happen. He pitched another one that was very similar to this one called The God Thing, which would have been in like 1975. That one wasn't picked up either. They brought in some British guys, asked them to pitch one. They pitched a weird time traveling thing where Kirk goes missing. They find him on a planet that would have been invisible and have to save him from a black hole that's going to consume the planet. And they somehow do, and then they realize, oh, we were the original inhabitants of this planet, the Titans, because we went back in time.
Did they accidentally just hire a couple of guys from Doctor Who? And they were just like, oh, blimey, this was due last week. Quick, what's that script we never used for Baker? Here you are, gentlemen, totally original story. Says Doctor, no, it doesn't.
Dr. Kirk.
Dr. Star Trek.
Dr. Trek.
Yeah, but then those guys leave and they decide, okay, well in that case, forget the movie thing. Let's do Star Trek Phase 2 as a new series on our new network that Paramount wanted to put together. The Paramount Network, or whatever the fuck it was called.
UPN.
It would eventually turn into UPN, I think. But at the time, they were trying to put together a new network. Didn't work out eventually. And they used what would have been this new network to launch a new Star Trek, and could get everybody back except for Spock. So they would have replaced him with a new Vulcan character named Zahn, who, fun fact, because Zahn never gets seen again outside of Phase 2, played the guy on the doomed Epsilon space station who is talking to the camera and stuff.
Wasn't Ilea going to be in Phase 2 too?
Ilea was going to be in Phase 2 as well, and Decker was going to be in Phase 2 because the whole hope was to kind of move away from Shatner and Nimoy and Kelly and folks because they were old. They were getting old, and B, they're fucking expensive as shit. So bring in these new young cheapskates, and we can do whatever the fuck we want with them. Decker would eventually just kind of mold into the captain's role. Ilea would do whatever the fuck. She ended up essentially being Troy later.
Yeah.
A good blueprint for Troy.
I always thought it was kind of funny that the guy who was going to play Zahn didn't even get to play Sonak.
I mean, Sonak gets... Well, they both get fucking killed.
Yeah,
horribly,
neither has a huge part, It just seems funny that, instead of still making him the, token Vulcan guy, we're just gonna make him a... I mean, I guess he probably had more lines than Sonak,
That's
so...
true. His death had more, to do with it than just seeing a blurred, horrifying, melting person.
Yeah, oh, God.
Oh, I love that scene. I fucking love that scene.
Still gives me
so
the willies.
much.
Scary. Isn't it also true that one of the pre-production designs that they did for the ship, for the Enterprise for Phase 2, actually ended up being recycled into the design that they're using for the Discovery?
Yes.
Oh, for Discovery, I never heard this.
Yeah. There's some old drawings of the sort of the refit of the Enterprise would have gone so far as to give it a triangular engineering section like the Discovery now has, and all that. Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, I'm skipping. Go on.
What else? What else was in my Phase 2 timeline? Yeah, so as I said, Nimoy wanted nothing to do with it. Firstly, because, he was doing a lot of stage stuff at the time. But also because he and Roddenberry were having so many fucking feuds over, merchandise issues that he was like, no, with all of this, I'm just going to have to say no and do my thing. And also, fuck you. Fuck you, Roddenberry. So that when they finally did the movie and Robert Wise, the director, comes on and says... No, we kind of need Spock. Everyone who's a Trekkie is telling me we absolutely need Spock. It won't be a movie without Spock. You know what? Just fucking pay him. Just fucking pay the guy. So that we can get him to do a thing. And yeah, but then the fucking whole network thing caved, and they realized, let's fuck doing this series to begin with, even though they were a week from shooting. They'd already built the fucking bridge and all this stuff.
Oh no.
I actually think I've seen some footage that they actually did shoot.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I thought they hadn't started yet.
Because I don't know if it was, maybe it was just rehearsal video, like video taken during rehearsals, because it wasn't good quality. But yeah, because I saw a documentary once about the making of motion picture, and they had in that some shots that were of Zahn.
Oh wow!
Being acting on the set.
Good for him.
Of the Phase 2.
Yeah, it's actually a big shame that when they lost him doing stuff, because he seemed like a nice guy. But then the series fell under, and also Star Wars was making like fucking huge bank, and they said, "Oh fuck, we should have gone movie after all. Let's see if we can catch up.
Let's do something that's completely opposite from what Star Wars is. Star Wars is a fun space adventure. Let's not do that."
This is a little more like 2001, where it's just weird and lots of effects.
Yeah,
for me, like this movie, probably of all of the movies, the thing is, the movies that are most maligned are this and Star Trek 5. But of all the movies, those are the two that are probably closest to the original series in like theme and
that's why I kind of like this one. I like this one because it reminds me of the series. It reminds me more of a television show, because this would have been the 2-hour premiere of the new series. They just turned it into a movie by adding lots more effects.
But yeah, definitely, speaking as someone who's never actually seen I've seen random snippets of 2001, and I'm aware of it as a pop culture artifact, it does feel like they took The Changeling and someone else's secondhand account of 2001 and smashed them together. And it's just like...
Well, yeah.
Like they want it, they know that like, okay, we're Star Trek. Like we're the brainy one, right? So we need to be more about thoughtfulness and science than this Star Wars with its laser jet fights and this and that. And I think I understand it was a noble attempt, but my God, the pacing...
The pacing's really bad.
Yeah.
The pacing's mostly bad because they never had a test screening.
Seriously?
They never had an audience test screening of this movie.
But why?
Because they ran out of time. Because they took so fucking long to do all those fucking optics, and to get all the music done. The music was done, I think, like 10 days before.
5 minutes before.
Yeah, like no, it was 6 days. 6 days before release date, the music was done.
Holy shit!
Jesus Christ!
I'm glad they took their time with it.
Yeah, the music was pretty.
Although I did also see that the original song that they were going to use for the Enterprise approach scene, which ends up being the main theme music, which is then reused much later for TNG, that there was originally a different song there, and it was fully scored and recorded, and you can actually see on YouTube that whole sequence set to the original score.
What happened?
They didn't like it. It's, like the producers or the director, somebody listened to it and was like, watched the test of it and was like, this sounds like a sailing ships type music. It's actually not too different from what it ended up being, but what they ended up with is better than what they...
Which is funny, because you think about the Star Trek II music, especially the main theme, and it has a very nautical feel.
Yeah.
So it's funny that they at first resisted it for this one.
But
it's also funny because half the reason this theme became the TNG theme was because they had a different theme originally, and it was frankly terrible. I've heard it. It's also on YouTube. And they was like, oh God, what do we have?
Yeah.
Oh, it's good, because this theme is amazing.
Yeah, it's a very good song. Very good music in this film. I don't know. I think the special effects in this movie, they look shitty and dated to us, but I think probably for the time they were pretty damn good. The ships look good, the clouds look good for the time. The only time it really failed was towards the end, where the Enterprise is going to the core of V'ger, and there were moments where it really looked like a model, even for like this. And maybe that was a result of maybe they were having to rush that bit. Who knows? Maybe it was one of the last things they did or something. Because again, like I even said while we were watching it, it's like, it's a good model. I just feel like they lit it wrong, so it looked like a model. Yeah. Not what it, another ship. I have very mixed feelings about this movie because I really think it's a good story.
Yeah, I love the story.
I just think that the pacing of it, and again, it's a product of its time. Movies in the 70s, 60s and 70s were made a lot different than they are even in the 80s.
Yeah.
They could be longer because chances were you were tripping on hallucinogenic drugs during the...
Well, so take 2001, prime example. that's 10 years before this movie, but yeah, that's a really long, boring movie
with an inexplicable ending.
With basically the same ending.
Yeah, more or less, actually.
Movie,
yeah. This is the dumbed down 2001.
A little bit, but
Oh
then
my God. No.
like,
Oh god.
like
Finish your
Apocalypse
sentence.
Now, that's another movie that's just very long and it's slow as dog shit though, right? But it's well paced.
Yeah,
Like it's not a action a minute type of film, but it's where the action is and how it moves from scene to scene is really well done. This movie here, Star Trek.
I mean, you could solve a huge amount of the problem just by cutting short some of those effect sequences they were so in love with. Oh,
And they were so expensive too.
Well, which is why they had to be in love with them. So yeah, we timed the shuttle, Kirk and Scotty taking their little pod to the Enterprise, and that whole sequence from the shuttle departing from Regula 1, because that flipped upside down will be Regula 1 in the next film, but from the shuttle detaching from the space office and then attaching to the Enterprise is 5 minutes and 52 seconds. 1 minute 8 seconds was the last line of dialogue. So a good
almost 5 minutes of just listening to the song
and looking at the Enterprise from a whole bunch of different angles.
And looking at
Watching
Shatner,
Kirk
yeah.
looking vaguely constipated.
also just shots of the shuttle itself, not even including the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Really shitty shots first of the shuttle with a picture of Scotty and Kirk transposed onto it, and then from
looking really flat, yeah.
Yeah, and then actually with them in the shuttle so you can get a good close up of Shatner's overly mascaraed lashes.
Yeah, you pointed out a couple times, but there were some weird makeup issues on this film.
Yeah, it was not great.
Speaking of makeup, this is the very first appearance of the
Lumpy Klingon.
Scotty's mustache.
Oh, yeah.
That too, yes.
And, it's been a while since I've seen the film, and what really stuck out to me was that the Klingon makeup, even in this movie, is very different from the Klingon makeup we'll see in Star Trek 3.
I had trouble even seeing what they looked like.
I mean, they looked like they had mostly flat foreheads, except a row of
right down the middle.
Right down the middle, a narrow row of ridges.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not the full forehead ridge that we get in Star Trek 3 and Worf and all that.
Yeah.
I was trying so hard to recognize Mark Leonard because he's the captain. He's the Klingon captain.
Yeah.
And he looks nothing like Mark Leonard anymore. So
yeah.
Mark Leonard, who plays Sarek.
Yeah.
Of course, most famously.
And Romulan
Commander.
Didn't Doohan write the Klingon dialogue?
He did, and he said take whatever and just cut all the vowels.
Yeah. So then I know in 3, when they actually had people, I forget their names right now, write a full language, they had to use the sounds Doohan had created as a base and work from there.
I think the sound, the logic behind the sounds makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, no, it works brilliantly.
It works, it's nice.
Did they actually say anywhere in the film that they are Klingons? I didn't notice. We know they're Klingons.
They definitely mentioned Klingon space, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if
did,
that means not the same thing.
But yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, they're on Klingon ships that we would recognize.
Right.
But those could also be Romulan ships, because oftentimes those ships were associated with Romulans, too.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's not made terribly explicit in the film. They're just hoping you'll get it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I wonder if people in the theater be like, oh, what are these new weird aliens?
This also had, during that sequence, the Klingon theme that Jerry Goldsmith wrote, which will reappear in 5, and will reappear in the TNG movies as Worf's theme.
I actually like that Klingon theme.
How did it go? I'm so bad at noticing things.
Yeah, that one.
That one, okay.
But yeah, because Jerry Goldsmith, this is the only TOS film he composed.
Yeah.
But then he comes back for, I'm pretty sure, the last 3. Definitely First Contact, and I'm pretty sure Nemesis and Insurrection. Generations was someone else whose name escapes me right now. But if you go on our Tumblr, I wrote a whole lengthy article about the various movie themes and what I think of them.
Wow.
They're shit. They're shit.
No, I like...
That's good work.
No, that's the uniforms you're thinking of, Ames.
Oh.
No, I even like most of the uniforms, just not these ones.
These ones are all awful.
What a great segue.
Good segue, Chris.
Oh, these
Sorry, Caitlin.
fucking
Did somebody
uniforms.
say Segway?
So, anyone who, has been following us for a while, and anyone who has read the Tumblr, knows that I am the self-appointed aesthetics pedant, whatever,
Wow.
Wow.
Worst pedant ever.
Ever, seriously.
of this podcast. And you know full well, if you've read these articles, that these are... I hate these uniforms more than any other Starfleet uniform in the history of the series. I loathe them. They are terrible. They look like fucking pajamas.
The feet are sewn on, too.
They
What?
are, which does not help the fucking pajama look.
I'm sorry, the feet are so
Did you
long?
not
They
notice
are.
the shoes are sewn in? They had to like custom the shoes for each actor too because of it, because they all had different size feet, obviously, so they couldn't just put any ones on a pair of pants.
But that's not... Why would you want that?
Because it's dumb.
That
'Cause
doesn't
it's really
even make
dumb.
any sense. Like, that's...
Your footy pajamas, that's all.
I'm just annoyed that the weird inconsistency, because let's get this straight, right? It's a fucking military organization, Starfleet.
Allegedly. I'm just kidding.
And
The equivalent of a
what they're
military
wearing
organization.
are uniforms. And uniforms
Should be
should be
Uniform.
uniform. Yet in every shot you see different variations, different type. Like some people had basically a jumpsuit.
Yeah. Some had the flap that covers the crotch. Some
Thank
did not
God.
get the flap
Yeah.
that covers
Some
the
had
crotch.
like sometimes they had like little short sleeve, t-shirts, muscle
Athletic wear.
shirts.
Takei had that, wraparound at one point.
Yeah, like
Which was the only one that looked even remotely okay.
I
frankly.
thought the white T-shirt on Kirk looked
Oh,
okay.
the Admiral's uniform, actually, I don't mind. And that makes its way into the Kelvin timeline as the official Admiral's uniform again. So
Was that the gray one with, like, the
white and the
yeah,
one you see.
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah, like
liked
a
that.
bib.
That was alright.
Yeah, that's specifically the Admiral's uniform.
That's not so bad. I
So-
mean, it's, again,
No,
not
I mean
good,
the
but...
I meant the later
The
one
t-shirt.
with the T-shirt with the deep V.
Oh, that one just looks...
I just think the form looked good on him.
It looked good on, but it just looks so unprofessional.
Well, also, it was, like,
Huh.
a very sheer white,
Yeah, you could... Yeah.
which
So-
I just don't... I hate that about whites.
So,
sheer.
back when I wrote that article about the uniforms, I mentioned this old Omni magazine article where they interviewed the costume designer for the motion picture.
Oh dear.
It's now hosted on some website called futurism.media that seems to mostly host some really weird crap. But this was very useful. Part of the reason for the sheer number of uniforms is actually loosely inspired by the actual military. He says, in the original there was just one uniform and that was that. But this time, in order to give more visual variety, everyone had a dress uniform, a Class A and B uniform, fatigues, recreational, just as you do in a real military organization.
They have that many in a real military organization?
Supposedly. But even then, I feel like everyone on the Enterprise had like 20, so... I mean,
and they were changing them
constantly. Like, where were they finding the time to change clothes this much?
It's like, oh god, we've been fired on. Quick, I need my fatigues.
Yeah, like, what is going on? There's a quote in here from the costume designer, which just, to me, explains everything. I've never studied design.
There it is.
His major was archaeology, then history and literature.
Wait, how the fuck did he get to be costume designer?
He ended
How
up...
did Jean-Luc Picard become a starship captain?
I don't know.
His major was
So, he'd always
archaeology and
been,
literature.
in his free time, a painter and an artist. He eventually became an actor and then wound up working in costuming, in stage, and that segued into film and television. I mean, having said that, he did, he made, there's some pictures in here. To his credit, there is some stuff that stuck around. Like the look of formal, ceremonial wear on Vulcan. What he establishes
looks good.
here, we'll keep seeing. What's really sad, there's some photos in here, some really interesting costumes for, alien civilians.
Oh, the ones you see in that opening scene at that
Right, but you
train
don't actually...
station equivalent.
Yeah, and you don't see any of them in the film that well. There's some pictures, these various species, and they have these lengthy backgrounds that he used, alright, so they should have this and that. And, some of the designs are actually really, really good.
Yeah, for you to see them for 0.2 seconds in the background of a crowded scene.
Yeah, and instead what you mostly see are these abysmal uniforms.
Oh, they're real bad.
Now, I wonder how much of the uniform debacle lies on Roddenberry. And I say that because later we will get the TNG first and second season one-piece spandex bodysuits.
My second least favorite uniforms.
Which is, they're awful. But the jumpsuits at least remind me of those in a little bit, and those jumpsuits on TNG, I'm pretty sure I read, and I'm sure we'll talk about it when we get there, but that was a Roddenberry thing where he was convinced that in the future everyone will be wearing spandex, that spandex is the material of the future.
Does he think that there aren't going to be fat people in the future? Or,
apparently, well,
speaking as a person of size, I would much prefer to wear basically anything else than
the
a
spandex
spandex
wasn't
suit.
really flattering on anyone.
Yeah, no, even like that. Well, that's the thing. It's like in here, there's a quote where he talks about how we wanted a design that would look good on everyone. It's like, well, you wound up with a design that looked good on no one, so halfway there.
A skin-tight sausage suit is not going to look good on everybody.
Very egalitarian.
Yeah.
Everyone looks equally shitty.
That's true.
From what I read, they felt shitty too, because I guess like the crotch just would like if you tried to sit with the crotch on those
we
pants,
saw how the crotches were working on this movie for sure.
You'd lose your balls or lose some other bits.
Oh.
That's why Shatner had to try to convince Nimoy to sit down so many times in that scene. He was supposed to sit down, but Nimoy refused. I will say, so the aesthetic failings of the uniforms aside, the music is lovely. It's just put over scenes that are far too long. And, the refit Constitution class looks great. It's a very nice ship.
Yeah, for me personally, this is, I think, my favorite Enterprise, just aesthetically, personally. I don't know. I've always liked it, even when I was a kid. This will look good. I like those square nacelles.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just always thought it looked really badass.
Yeah, it's a good look.
Yeah.
I feel like the neck looks a lot more solid than it did during TOS. It always just looked like it should be snapping in half. This it looks a little more solid, and I appreciate that. The nacelle pylons also, they add like a little bit of flair, and that just makes them look a little more well put together.
Yeah, it's definitely a 70s ship.
Yeah.
It's a 70s aesthetic.
Yeah, and oh my god, the interior in this one is so 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God they redesigned a lot of that for the remaining films.
I also like that, because obviously they were shooting, in the original show, they were not worried about fidelity in the picture, and therefore I think the model, although the model itself, you see the original series model is fairly detailed. It's not a shitty model, but it didn't have a lot of surface detail really. And in the movie though, they were filming it on film, and it was going to be displayed in movie theaters, so they put a lot of effort into making the ship look like it could be a real ship. And
the lighting in there
plates
must be amazing too.
Yeah. Well, so this is the first time we see the surface of the skin of the ship essentially, and they do this thing which where the steel plates, the individual steel plates that they bolt down or whatever are actually visible, and they shimmer differently, and it becomes sort of a look that a lot of the Starfleet ships have, which is this sort of, I think the term that they use in the model building world is Aztecing, because it kind of looks like Aztec symbols when you look at it.
Huh.
Now I also know that apparently, in the series, Nimoy could rewear the ears a couple of times before he'd have to get them replaced. But in the movie, he went through 3 pairs of ears a day.
Wow.
Because
were they melting under the lights or something?
Well, they just show wear and tear of being on your head, and they'd have to just scrap them, get new ones. So they were just printing out ear after ear after ear all through the production run.
Wow.
Good God, I hope they eventually worked it out so that they could at least get a pair of ears last a day.
I don't know. I don't think they
Not
did.
for this movie,
Wow.
anyway.
Oh, yeah, not for that. I mean, in future, though, just as...
Eventually they just paid for Nimoy's ears to be surgically altered.
To be caught in a rice picker?
Yes.
To be surgically caught in a rice picker?
Excuse
me.
It was a sanitary stainless steel.
Hell, they shaved Persis Kambata's head, so...
Yeah.
She was none too pleased originally.
Your hair.
She was a, what do they call it? Miss India.
Really?
Model.
Huh. She's Indian?
Yeah.
India is in...
As in the country.
Interesting. I would not have imagined her as being Indian.
No, when she's
She
got
looks less Indian than Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah, that's true.
When she's got the hair, you can see it a whole lot better now. Because she had gorgeous supermodel hair because she was a model.
No wonder she was mad about them shaving her head.
Yeah.
Although, considering the quality of some of the bald caps we got in TOS, I'm glad she let them... they probably would have done a better job, but... I don't know, though, considering some of the weird makeup we had in this. Spock's very pink lips.
I wouldn't have noticed until you brought it up.
Shatner's way too much eyeliner in most scenes.
Yeah.
Again, I wouldn't have noticed that. I did notice he looked like he lost some weight. He claimed that he was like exercising and eating nothing for the weeks up to the movie.
Shatner?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, holy shit! Yeah, with hair, she actually
Let's
does
see.
look Indian. Like,
We'll have to post
She's
it.
so pretty.
yeah, she is. She's very pretty. But yeah, like the hair just totally makes it.
Wow. Is this recent?
No, I think that's
No, she actually died
at
quite
the time.
young.
Yeah, she's dead.
Oh, that's so sad.
But yeah,
She's gorgeous, yeah.
Yeah. Ilea's fucking weird though. Let's get into Ilea.
Yeah, you
'cause
said
I know
you had
guys
some-
you guys were asking because Ilea, when we meet Ilea, and she's hilarious. She walks in and she says, what does she say again?
My oath of celibacy still stands.
Yes. So the idea, and Ilea would have been a character on the series when the series was being made, and there was a whole big character list and a whole tome of what the new stories in the series are, what the characters are like now that it's been 10 years. Who the fuck is Ilea? She is a Deltan. Deltans are known, they're completely bald except for their eyebrows and eyelashes. Apparently. Well, we never get to see if there's any more, but
Her brows were amazing. I mean, in her defense.
supermodel. But anyway, getting back to Ilea. The idea behind the Deltans is that they come from a people who are so hypersexual that literally everything they do has a weird sexual tone to it. Like all their friends, they just bang their friends. All their relatives, they wear their sex on their sleeve so that when she comes to Starfleet and has to do fucking anything, she has to take a vow of chastity.
because
Did
she'll
Gene
just be
come up
banging
with this?
Because-
Or...
Oh, I'm certain
Yeah,
Roddenberry came
I
up
was
with
gonna
this.
ask the same thing. That's
Yeah,
pure
that is
fucking.
a Roddenberry all written all over.
See, what's funny though is what's great about it without any of that context. It's just like the first thing she says when meeting Kirk. It's like, look, I fucking heard of you. Back off.
I know, in the movie it comes out of nowhere and
Yeah,
you're
it's
like,
some
why
weird
is
non
this
sequitur.
here? Why is it in here?
I
Why
wonder
did you
if that was,
keep
like,
that element
a
of her
cut-
character?
What if that was like a cut line? Maybe somebody mentions because when they're like, "Oh, she's a Deltan," everyone looks at each other and Chekhov gives a big ear to ear grin.
Yeah, like
He knows
it
he's gonna
really,
get some. He
I hear
thinks.
Deltan girls are easy.
Yeah,
it really doesn't. Speaking of Walter, you said he actually got injured at some point.
Yeah, when they were doing the explosion at his station, and then his sleeve catches fire. So under the sleeve, he was wearing like what?
Some kind of retardant.
Yeah, some
something
kind
or
of
other.
foil around the arm so he doesn't get burned. But I guess he got burned anyway.
He was wearing some kind of foil under the sleeve, which was supposed to keep him from getting burned, but instead made him well done without any griddle marks.
So what happened was we didn't realize they meant that flame retardant foil. We just literally
Here's
brought in
what it
some
is,
tin
like-
foil.
And we wrapped him in Reynolds.
yeah.
Thought it would be great.
He's like, I don't want to get burned. I don't know why he's speaking Russian.
We always do this with poor
He
Walter.
is
I
method
don't
actor. He
want to get
always
burned,
does
so
the
I will
accent.
wrap my arm in the foil from the sandwich you gave me.
Oh, poor
Oh.
Walter.
Persis got herself hurt too because that little gem thing at her throat
Yeah.
that she wears when she's the
was
probe.
made of broken glass.
That singed her throat a little bit.
Jesus.
Is that a
And
light
also
on it,
in
right?
that sonic shower when she first appears as the probe out of the sonic shower and you see all the smoke of course isn't smoke. The smoke is dry ice and it's fucking freezing in there and she got too cold. I forget if she had some kind of cold burns or something.
Jesus.
Who the fuck was in charge of safety on this fucking set?
They had her standing
Walter,
barefoot.
that's the problem.
Barefoot on dry ice, and she lost both of her feet.
Fucking amateur hour. I'm like,
Her hair did grow back okay though, so there's
Good.
that.
Thank God.
I'm genuinely kind of upset on all the actors' behalf, though. Like, what the actual fuck, Robert Wise? Get your shit together and fucking get a better editor.
Yeah, that's what this movie needed was
Yeah.
some serious cutting. There's a whole sequence in the middle of the movie, really for no discernible reason other than to maybe do some more special effects, where the ship goes out of control in warp.
Oh, when they enter that stupid fucking
They go
wormhole.
into a wormhole.
God, it's so
and
unnecessary.
And there's an asteroid in the wormhole.
It literally shows us nothing.
Oh
Well-
my God! And the weird slow talking.
Like,
It
the scene
added
wasn't long
5
enough.
minutes.
Like, really,
Yeah.
the only thing we got from that scene, the only thing we got from that scene was Decker countermanding Kirk's orders to fire phasers.
Yeah.
I mean, we also got that warp is on the fritz.
Yeah.
Warp we haven't quite figured out yet, but we also know that things aren't working well on the ship because of the transporter accident.
Oh, right, exactly. That's like.
Do we need everything
we
to
don't
not be
need-
working?
We didn't need a second the ship is broken scene. We could have just had them warp.
They just
where
couldn't...
they need to go. Or maybe they warp and the ship just breaks down,
Well,
and then Spock comes and rescues them.
It's like they couldn't think of a better way to actually finally really prove to the audience, like, yeah, no, actually, Kirk is a little in over his head with this new model and needs Decker there to point out when he's about to break everything.
Yeah.
But there had to have been a better... Or at least get rid of the slow talking, at least, and the scene would have been that much shorter.
That's the thing. You could have cut that scene in half if they had just continued talking at a normal pace.
Well, yeah, you could have cut that scene shorter. You could have cut the Enterprise flyby shorter, the V'ger fly-through shorter.
Yeah,
like
all of these are just, like, the optics going out of control because look at all the pretty things we can do with 70s level technology.
Which, again, it's very impressive, boys, but we're just...
So it is... The movie... That is a theme of the movie that I think gets overlooked quite a bit, and that is the sort of Kirk grasping onto his command in a way that might not be. It reminded me, made me think a little bit about Pike and how he was during when he was talking to Doctor Bartender,
Dr. Drinks.
Dr. Drinks. That it was sort of like, Kirk is getting old, and he's
been behind a desk.
He's been
for
behind
2.5 years
desk
now.
for years, and he doesn't belong there, and he doesn't feel like he belongs there, and somehow he manages to find his way out of there every time he needs to.
Yep. Which is why they eventually say, fuck it, he's a captain again. Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Doc was like, Jim,
What are you fucking
you're being
doing?
obsessed.
What
are you
was
doing?
with McCoy this fucking movie? What the fuck was with McCoy this entire fucking movie?
He was criminally underused.
Yep.
There was no, it's like he had no purpose and they didn't know what to do with
And they
him.
kept having
That's
him...
basically exactly what was going on.
Was it like 2 or 3 times where he came to the bridge, literally said nothing, and then left?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he was on the actor call sheet that day, so he had to be there. It's like, come here, Bones. Okay, we're done. Go away. So because we already filmed a bit that you're not in.
If you're a fan of Star Trek, and I'm going to say if you were a fan of the original series, you were a fan of, like, you have to get remember, this is 1978.
Yep.
There's no other movies. There's no other Star Trek stuff other than the original
Star
series.
Trek's been off for 9
70
years.
Probably not.
79, isn't it?
Or 79, whatever year this came
10
out.
years.
So it's been off the air for 10 years, and that the only exposure you have to Star Trek. Now, all the other characters, Rand, Chapel, Sulu, Chekhov, even Uhura, or in Scotty to an extent, are all sort of, they were the crew, but the main people, the main guys, was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Yep.
They were the trio. That's why it's them, the 3 that go out with Decker and Robo Leah out to the machine at the end, because Star Trek is those 3 guys.
Yeah.
They're the stars of the show. And I don't think the screenwriters got that.
Yeah.
Because the relation... So they do have a little, lip service towards the relationship between Kirk and McCoy, but none of the personality is there. I really think that, yes, having Spock with the colon R and all that was, sure... But it kind of ruined Spock's character through most of the movie.
Yeah.
He's
I think they added him in so late that they had to squint. Figure okay, we have Nimoy now. He said yes. Write him in somewhere.
Yeah, what do we do?
Yeah, because
make him go on a spacewalk for 10 fucking minutes.
Because he's just a jerk most of the movie,
Yeah.
And then at the end, after he has sex with V'ger, he comes back and he's back to normal Spock.
Why didn't he just mind meld Ilea instead of going into V'ger?
Because he couldn't stop looking at that throbbing orifice.
I must enter that sphincter.
Yeah.
Well,
There was definitely some weird impregnation, subtext, symbolism
I
in this
didn't like
movie.
it.
All right,
Ames.
this is pawn far enough.
This hasn't gone far enough.
Ames, the reason he had to spacewalk instead of mind melding with the robot was because, hey, there's that whole sequence in 2001 we kind of want to knock off.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I don't think I've seen any of 2001: A Space Odyssey, so I have no idea what you're talking
It's
about.
weird. It's
It's a good movie.
I understand
It's-
there's a computer
yeah,
who's
it's an odd
evil.
movie.
It's
That's
been-
one segment of it. It's like a movie in a bunch of little segments.
Is
Yeah.
an evil computer not the whole point?
No.
What?
The point of the point of 2001 is
Look at the special effects we
human.
have.
No, it's like human evolution.
Yeah.
It's the idea that aliens have been involved in steering human evolution since the beginning, and they only take an interest every now and again.
So this, I guess, is sort of the opposite, where it's a machine is evolving and we have to help it along to the next level.
Which is a nice storyline. I kind of like the storyline.
Yeah, it's all,
what's really, really funny is they didn't have the ending. They didn't know what to do with the ending until...
That was pretty clear.
Way after they were already producing. They were already shooting, acting and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, Casablanca, they didn't know how that was going to end until they got there. But that's a classic.
Wow. It was mostly just fighting between Roddenberry and the guy that was doing that they dragged kicking and screaming in Harold Livingston to do the writing. That the two of them did not get along. That Livingston said he tried to rewrite everything Roddenberry wrote. Roddenberry tried to rewrite everything Livingston wrote, and they just hated the shit out of each other. Livingston quit 3 times.
Jesus. Why were either of them working on this movie? Roddenberry sucks, writer.
I mean, just the fact that he wanted to pitch a movie that was about sentient cows,
I'm guessing it was a vegetarianism.
Well, sure, and that sounds like a fine basis for an episode, but a whole movie, you're like
a movie.
Fair point. But seriously, how is that a basis for a film? That's an episode. If there was an episode of Star Trek, sure. But how the fuck do you make a movie out of that? I'm sure Peter would love it if it existed.
I know, that's what I was thinking when you were talking about it. I was thinking, wow, was he a big vegetarian PETA supporter type of person?
I don't know.
But again,
it would have been a good animated series episode, frankly. And by good, I mean it would have been terrible, but so was the rest of the animated series.
And even this, like I said, like Jake said, like we've all said, this is just it's Nomad. There's shades, I get, of other things in there. It's a television episode stretched out.
50 Shades of Nomad.
Yeah. And they really
if it were an episode, it would be a great episode.
Yeah, if it had been...
they would just cut all the expensive shit, because this was a really, really fucking expensive movie at the time. One of the most expensive at the time. It cost $46 million.
In 70s
in
money?
In the 70s money.
That's a lot of money for a movie now.
A lot of that, a chunk of that was the Phase 2 stuff, because that kind of just got enveloped in the budgeting, because they reused the bridge and they reused a bunch of stuff, even though they had to fix it all up to be usable on the big screen. But yeah, really fucking expensive. Considering their original budget was $15 million.
Oh right, so that was they used the Phase 2 sets. I thought I was confused. I was like, wait, these couldn't have been the Desilu sets. Those I'm sure were long gone.
Oh yeah, those were long gone. Yeah, we'll talk about it when we do Wrath. Wrath cost $11 million, which was, on budget and fine, but they also reused most stuff from the
they reused
picture.
Footage, for God's sake.
They used a lot of the optics, they used the models, they used the bridge.
Yeah, well, I mean, they get a lot of mileage out of these sets, because
that's great.
There's the main hallway that we see throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Is reused.
Every hallway we ever see
is in TNG. I mean, there's the engineering, the core. Obviously, it's been refit several times, but the engineering set, it's the same set.
That set looked good.
As on TNG, just redone.
Oh, you know what set?
But you can recognize the elevator. And everything.
You know what set I fucking hated?
What?
Recreation Deck. Fucking hated Recreation Deck.
With its bright orange, not even bright, sort of burnt orange rug.
With its stupid bowling alley floor and its weird, stupid, lift them up Lego set games.
That and the, screensaver for Shatner's TV were the most 70s thing about this Enterprise.
It was also fucking enormous. The Recreation Deck, it took up an entire fucking, studio.
Wow.
For just this one fucking room that was used twice and looked dumb.
Now, here's the thing, right? Because I feel like, to scale, this ship, this Enterprise, must be way bigger than it was in the show. Because I'm just thinking of the shuttle bay. Because in the show, the shuttle bay is...
like a garage.
It's like a garage. It's a little, maybe twice as wide as the shuttle itself. You could maybe fit 2 side by side. A two shuttle garage. Mm-hmm. That engineering deck, the lower hull on this ship looked a fuck ton wider than that.
Well, you see, that wasn't the shuttle bay we saw. That was a cargo bay.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that true?
There's a little voiceover at one point after Kirk had landed and gotten off. Shuttle pod now available.
After he landed and gotten off.
There's a little on the PA. You hear, shuttle pod now available at cargo 6.
So
I don't know how the cargo gets in there.
Where are these cargo bays? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, well maybe then, maybe not. Okay,
no, you're right.
My mistake. It looked Yeah.
But you're right. When we do see the shuttle bay in later films, it does seem significantly larger than we ever saw it in...
Well, the scale of the Enterprise in Star Trek V is way off the map. They have like 8 decks.
Which are out of order, but we'll get to that when we get to Star Trek V. Also, this movie, I checked the inflation calculator, $164 million.
That's the budget?
Yeah, in modern money. That's the cost of a Marvel movie. But those make close to, if not over, $1 billion in box office.
How did this one do at the box office? Do we know?
It did all right. It did all right. They were hoping for bigger, but because the budget ran so high, I think that kind of screwed them over a bit. But from what I hear, it's one of the highest grossing films in the franchise when you adjust for inflation. But I think a lot of that was like international sales and stuff. But net, I don't think was as high as others. But it did okay, but they weren't satisfied.
Well, it did well enough that it got a sequel.
Exactly.
But that sequel had a much smaller budget.
Well, let's talk about the sequel, right? Because we're going to be getting to that next week. And it's just a reset. Like they reboot. Like this.
Yeah.
This you could look at this as being a standalone film. I wouldn't consider Wrath of Khan a sequel by any stretch because it's a reboot.
I don't know. It's got a 2 after the name.
It doesn't have 2, but this didn't have 1 after the name. I don't know because everything is different. Like they held over some things, but.
Yeah, they kept the exterior. They more or less kept the bridge. They tweaked it a bit.
Yeah.
But what are we talking about in terms of it's like a reboot?
Well, they just
are you talking storyline or are you talking assets?
I mean, lots of things different, right? Like the
costume's
totally different. That's the only thing I could think of. The music's totally different. They don't.
Well, there's also like at the end of this one, it's implied that maybe now Kirk is going to stay captain for a while, and they're going to bop around and have new adventures. They just finished this massive refit of the ship. Next movie, he's back to being an admiral, and the Enterprise is a training vessel.
Yeah.
Like, they spent all this time and all these resources to make it cutting edge, and they go, fuck it, we're going to use it for trainees now.
Yeah, that's weird.
Which seems strange.
But we'll talk about that in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because that is weird. But I also do think, at this point in time, surely the Excelsior class is under development, at least.
Yeah,
and don't call me Shirley.
Yeah. How much sense does it make to do such a major refit on the Enterprise, on an aging class?
I mean, spaceships are probably fucking mad expensive.
Yeah, but this refit here is practically a new ship. Like everything inside is different.
Yeah.
Everything outside is different.
Maybe it's like the way the U.S. Navy refits the USS Constitution. Maybe the Enterprise is like their showpiece ship. They like drive it around from port to port for people to look at it and take pictures on it. Like,
I mean,
becomes just a tourist trap. Remember how, Chris, you used to talk about how you figured like the captains who wind up in charge of the USS Constitution must like fucking hate their lives because they're like, I joined the Navy so I could do some good, and what am I doing?
I'm running a museum.
Yeah, so I wonder if like that's the continuity I like. Kirk is himself a relic and winds up running the museum that becomes the USS Enterprise.
We've been talking about the car that was Decker supposed to be Commodore Decker's son.
I think that was the initial plan that would have worked into Phase 2.
Right.
And I know it's definitely present in some novels.
Okay, and I know it's a big
definitely
like
made that connection.
It's definitely a big thing among fan circles.
Yeah,
like it's just assumed.
Matt Decker being the guy that killed himself in the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah, would he have taken that out on Kirk, do you think, if they had played that?
No, I think he would have had the same respect for Kirk that his dad had for Kirk by the end, and kind of been that kind of a relationship.
Maybe. I don't know. I did like. That's something they talked, everyone made a big deal about how, on Discovery, we're going to violate the Roddenberry rule about no interpersonal conflict on the ship.
Interpersonal conflict is the best part of television.
Well, and also that's basically the whole thing with Decker and Kirk there.
Like Finney and Kirk. And everybody else and Kirk.
Yeah, this was very much like we were talking earlier, like how TOS this feels. And they really did go back to like first season, kind of an asshole Kirk for this one. Like, there were definitely times like, Kirk, would you fucking shut up and let people who know what they're doing? Because he really does. This movie is mostly Kirk making mistakes.
Yeah, and then McCoy telling him, calm the fuck down, Kirk. I don't know what I'm doing else on this ship because you don't need me here, but you pulled me out of retirement, which is really fucking cruel.
Yeah, it was pretty shitty. He's like, oh, it sounds like there was some fucking loophole that dragged me back. Isn't that interesting, Kirk?
And yet he stays in Starfleet for the next 10 years or so.
Yeah. I mean, he
despite
could have been
that.
chilling out on Earth with all that casual nudity.
And all that beard on his face.
He
Oh,
could
I'm
have
so
gone to
glad that
Delta
didn't
4.
stay.
I mean, I want to go to Delta 4.
What's Delta 4?
That's where his, like,
that's
wife
where-
is, right?
No,
That's
Delta
where the Deltons are from.
That's where the Deltons are from.
Oh, yeah.
And all their casual sex constantly.
Yeah, but doesn't he have that sexy wife somewhere?
Natira on the asteroid?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
it.
yeah,
Why?
yeah.
I would
Did they ever
just
get
have
rid of
retired on the asteroid. They never would have found him.
Did they ever hook back up?
I hope so.
Absolutely.
By the way, to explain my casual nudity comment, so I don't know where it is anymore.
Oh, there was
but-
a reason for that?
Yes.
I thought you were just hoping that McCoy was nude somewhere.
No, so
Oh, wait, that's Caitlin.
the fate...
I'm nude right here.
I had a book that talked about the creation of Phase 2. It's probably still at my parents' house or something, I don't know. But it talked about like a lot of the stuff you discussed earlier, although not as in-depth and not everything about the transition. You know, it even had some of the scripts they never used and this and that. But it did have an early draft of the episode that would become Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Oh, yeah. In Thy Image. It was
Yeah, that sounds right. And
Until Roddenberry and Livingston tore it to fucking shreds.
And the original script, I don't know if this was after they knew it was going to become a movie and they could maybe get away with a bit more, but it was going to have a scene on Earth and people were just going to totally be into casual nudity, like in parks and shit on Earth, according to this early draft.
Oh, my. That's a Roddenberry thing right there.
No, that wasn't
was
even...
bulgy pants.
That was just like one of the early versions by the other fella.
Oh, that's funny.
It sounds
Yeah.
like my kind of future.
But that's why I said Doc was mad he's not on Earth with the casual nudity. That was just not a complete
Oh,
non
funny.
sequitur.
Yeah.
Well, you know what else Roddenberry would have put in? Sorry to cut you off, Jake. Roddenberry would have put in Phase 2 is that no one can have alcohol anymore. Which is shocking. Except Scotty. Scotty might have a loophole.
I was saying, what about fucking Scotty and Doc?
I think he said Scotty might be able to be exempt, but otherwise no more alcohol on
Why would there
the
be no
Enterprise.
alcohol? Why isn't Roddenberry
Because it's
like
the future.
Yeah.
Well, I know
Roddenberry had a lot of weird ideas.
Well, and certainly in TNG we see a lot of synthahol, so...
Sorry, what were
Yeah,
you going to say, Jake?
I thought it was funny how, so at the end, you know, the climax of the film is, you know, they've discovered that V'ger is actually Voyager, and
Shocking.
Decker sacrifices himself to both bang the Ilea robot, but also to
Super giant orgasm.
get the Voyager probe to
Transmit its findings.
transmit its thing and transcend to another plane of existence or some nonsense.
Yeah.
And then, so Decker does that, and then Kirk and McCoy and Spock go back to the ship, and Kirk's like, "Man, we did such a great job today. We brought into the world a new life form." And McCoy's like, "Yeah, it's been a long time since I delivered a baby, and now I have." And I'm the whole time thinking, like, "You didn't do shit. You stood there, and Decker killed himself."
It's like that last scene...
That's what we all wanted.
That last scene did feel like it should have been on the end of a TOS episode. But one where they'd actually, like you said, done something.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like they all of a sudden remembered how the trio was supposed to interact. Because even, you know, one of them is like, yeah, and this and that, and it's gonna have to, you know, it's gonna have all these human foibles, and McCoy's like, right, Spock? Ha ha ha. And like, so I'm like, yes, Doctor, they're going to have to deal with that as well. Like, all of a sudden, they remembered how those three characters worked. And it's so incongruous, because like you said, for the rest of the film didn't know how they worked. So that ending comes out of nowhere.
But what they forgot is how a tragic episode like that should have ended. Because if that was a TOS episode, it would have ended with like a shot of the ship and like really quiet, sad music under the credits.
Oh, but it's not tragic.
They wouldn't have finished it. I don't know. It seemed pretty bad to me.
Well, no, because they transcended to another plane of something.
Sounds like bullshit.
It probably
It
is.
sounds kind of like bullshit, to be honest.
Yep.
There was never any sense of tension.
Those hours of looking at awe at things.
Yeah.
And when you're feeling awe, you don't really feel the tension.
Right, but at the end they try to force like, oh, P.S., this thing's about to destroy Earth, and you're like,
Oh, right. I forgot about
And obviously, there's, with any movie, especially something like this, you're sitting there and you're like, you know everything's gonna be fine in the end. But when a movie does it well, they're still on, oh, but how are they gonna do it? You know, it's like, you know the crew's gonna survive. You know James Bond is gonna live. You know all these things. But it's a sense of how do they get out of this one? This one, I don't care how they get out of it. Because I forget there's anything to get out of. You know, there's like, apparently V'ger has shot a bunch of probes. It's gonna decimate the planet, I suppose. But I kept kind of forgetting.
I would say that, you know, aside from, you're right, I mean, I think that the drawn outness of the whole thing makes it a little hard to have tension.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do feel like this was true to, in theme, and that this was true to Star Trek. Just in terms of having the alien, having it be an unknown thing that we have to find out about.
I almost feel like it would have worked better if they hadn't tried to inject this false, the world is going to be destroyed thing at the end.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like they had forgotten, like, they feel like, oh no, we need to have, like, it's not enough for them to just go in and figure it out and fix it. Like, they have to do it on this sort of artificial, and there's not even really a countdown. We don't know how long they have. The ending could have worked just as well without this, like, it's about to level the planet!
Yeah, but that, as we find out, I mean, that's the way you make a Star Trek film, is you threaten Earth.
Yeah.
You destroy the shit out of San Francisco.
Yeah. Or the Yorktown. Or threaten to.
Or throw Worf across a room.
Speaking of the Yorktown, actually, one thing I did appreciate was the few shots we saw of the Enterprise inside the V'ger, like, main ship.
Or it was really zoomed out.
Yeah, because one
Show the
thing
scale.
you don't find a lot with any, frankly, science fiction I've seen at this point in my life is they always talk about how huge shit is and how expansive, but you almost never feel that, to me anyway. Like, in Star Wars even, like, the Death Star is supposed to be this gargantuan thing. The Executor is supposed to be this enormous Star Destroyer, but because everything is so big and you so rarely see things sort of against one another in a sort of way where you can really sit and appreciate it. Like, you occasionally see, like, little fighters going at Star Destroyers, but it's so quick. There's no real, for me, appreciation of the sheer hugeness of everything. And even in Star Trek, you get that. Like, I never got the sense that the Doomsday ship was all that large. Even when we saw the other ship go into it, it's like, because again, you so rarely see the Enterprise against anything else, there's really no sense of how huge it actually is. The reason the Yorktown made me think of that is I feel like the Yorktown was one of the few times in modern sci-fi where I felt like they did a good job of giving you this sense of scale by having...
What instance are you talking about, the Yorktown?
Star Trek Beyond, sorry. That Yorktown, the star base.
Okay, what did they show it against?
Well, they show the Enterprise going into, like, one of its bays, and then you can kind of see it through a river.
Oh, the Yorktown is a base.
Yeah.
I thought it was a ship.
No, sorry, it's that big base that,
In Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah, that gets... It's sort of the main thing that gets threatened in the climax.
I know the Yorktown is a ship on TOS.
It is, yeah, that's part of this. I'm talking about the Yorktown, the base in the Kelvin timeline.
Stupid Kelvin timeline.
But there's a moment there where you see the Enterprise sort of going into a dock there, and you can kind of see it through part of the city that's translucent. You get a sense of how big everything is. And this also did a good job, because you see the Enterprise, first against the cloud, and you're like, all right, you kind of get an idea, because you sort of roughly know how big the Klingon ships are, and then you see it as this speck. And it's like, yeah, for once you kind of get an idea of, like, no, really, though. It gives you in to look at... It's one of the few times where just giving you in to look at things actually worked out. Because it's like, yes, this is what I want to take a minute to look at. This thing, like, no, here. This ship, which we have established is pretty big, which they did a slightly better job at by showing it in the base with the little spaceman floating around it. Although then they fuck it up later. Because when they get out to go visit V'ger, the people are way too big in comparison to the saucer.
Yeah. Well, speaking of scale... So at the beginning of the movie, they say that the cloud is, like 80 AU?
80-something AU.
Was it 80?
Yeah.
I thought it was in the 40s, but
no,
still.
It was 80-something.
Okay. Yeah, AU, like, that would make it, like, bigger than the solar system, right?
Like, quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, because an AU, remind me, is that the one from our solar system? Or
No, that's
the
the
Earth to the
distance
sun?
between Earth and the Sun.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Pluto is about 80 AU
Okay.
away. Or no, about 40, about 40 AU. So this thing is wider than twice
but that's
the distance.
that's the cloud, right?
That's the cloud.
But inside the cloud, the thing is smaller than that.
But still.
It must be enormous.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, look at how tiny the Enterprise is inside it.
But
So wait, how close to Earth is it when it comes in?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, this thing would still be pretty far away from Earth by the time the edge of the cloud is touching Earth.
I mean, it's pretty... Well, the cloud has dispersed, I think, before it gets to the solar system.
Does it say that? Does it ever say that?
So that's part of the problem, is because they're stuck inside V'ger, well, the V'ger outer shell thing, all they're getting is... Because they can't transmit out, but apparently transmissions from Starfleet are getting in. And, like, at one point, Uhura does mention that sensors Starfleet is tracking it and the cloud has gone away.
Oh, I missed that.
But I forget exactly when. They may have technically already been in the solar system when the cloud went away. And certainly by the time they're parked, the cloud is definitely gone, and they were being picked up by, like, lunar sensors. So they are oddly close. Like, that ship really is, like, very close to Earth.
And since it's so big, they can probably see it.
Yeah.
How long was it here? Was it blocking out the sun? How much damage did it do to the Earth just by being there for a little while?
Oh, God. So this is only the most loosely related, but another thing that I was thinking we were watching it, they're like, all right, we gotta risk going to warp in the solar system. It's like, guys, go up. Then go to warp.
Oh my god, they should. Why has that never come up?
Like-
Because no one has 3D thinking.
No.
A la Khan.
Yeah, like just, I mean, I know you're probably still within the gravity well of the sun, and I'm sure that's part of the risk, I guess, not just the whole, there's debris everywhere, although as I think you said, Ames, like, they've never been worried about going to warp in solar systems before, but whatever!
Whoops.
But yeah, like, if it's that big of a deal, go up. Almost everything in our solar system, as far as I know, is basically on the same plane. I'm sure there's some random
Yeah, it
debris
really
and
is, isn't
weird.
it?
There's comets and shit.
Well,
that
yeah,
go
but they
up.
have deflector shields, like, or whatever, don't they? I mean,
deflector
like,
dish,
yeah,
yeah,
that.
you're
So, what's the big deal? I would guess that unless you flew directly into a planet,
Yeah, like, go up, and then go to warp, and then get into your shitty wormhole scene.
shitty wormhole
Fucking
scene.
worm. No, and then cut the shitty wormhole scene.
Yes.
And go on to the
Say,
next
yes.
fucking
Fly
thing.
so far up that you don't go into the wormhole and chop like 25 minutes out of this movie.
Find a different way to show that Decker does genuinely know the ship better than Kirk. I'm sure there was something if you'd taken 5 minutes.
Torpedo.
Oh god, I will say the...
Photon taquitos.
I was about to say, the one great thing about that scene was hearing Koenig's Russian accent slowed down. That's hilarious. The rest of it is pain.
Oh, poor Walter. Giving us joyful laughter all the
Listen,
time.
he earned his sandwich this week. He's fine.
Yeah,
They did charge him for the burn cell cream, though.
That's true.
It's true, which was 3.5 sandwiches. So at the end of it, he was 2.5 sandwiches out of his own pocket, you know? So...
I like to imagine that Walter Koenig just has a wallet
Has a
full of
wallet full of
sandwiches. So people are like, Walter, why are you bringing that cooler with you? What cooler? That is wallet.
That is wallet. That is where I keep my currency. I was told the only thing that people trade in these days is ham sandwiches. Is this not correct?
No one tell him. Oh god, it's good to have him back.
It is.
I will give you 6 ham sandwiches for a pair of jeans. Yes? It's good trade. It's good ham. Black Forest ham. From Virginia. Virginia. This is where we have good Black Forest ham. It's a Russian invention. Oh, fuck me.
Well done, Caitlin.
Thank you, Ames.
That was fantastic.
Oh.
Man, I think our listeners should send in things for me to say in a Chekhov voice. I'll be like that guy from Honest Trailers.
Yeah, there we go.
Except in Russian.
Yeah.
So, can we talk about...
Nah.
Good. What the fuck is up with Kirk's hair color? Like, he's got
No
like...
idea.
He has black hair in this movie.
It's not
Jake.
black. It's
Jake.
dark.
Dark
Jake.
brown.
It's a piece.
No. I mean, why wouldn't they give him the same hair color he had on the show if he's wearing a wig?
I mean, I think, because we did talk about this and I did think about it, and I do genuinely think it's whatever filter or color correction or whatever they did, because Koenig's hair is a lot darker than it normally looks. And you're right, in later films it does look a little lighter. Again, it never gets quite as light.
Curlier,
Yeah,
though.
it's not...
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a weird thing. Like, between original series and the movies, Kirk gets curly, dark brown hair.
Yeah.
Before having straight blonde hair in the show.
As someone who was born a platinum blonde and is edging closer and closer to an ugly, mousy brown, maybe it was just age.
Just age.
Blonde hair does darken with age. Like, my hair is, I mean, like if you remember my natural hair color, like when I was like a little baby, my hair was like platinum blonde, and it's gotten like significantly darker.
I feel like with children though, like the going from blonde to dark is one thing, but for an adult, do adults change that much too?
I mean, probably when he started to go gray, he decided to dye his hair, and for some reason he went brown.
That
Maybe.
could be it too, yeah.
Because I'm sure he started to go gray, and I mean, everything we know of Shatner, he's a pretty vain guy. Now, why his hair suddenly changed texture, I got nothing.
I wonder if it's because maybe in the series they were doing like a different treatment to it.
No, maybe.
Because I feel like there was a comment somewhere that he has naturally curlier hair.
Oh,
and
does he?
In the series, they probably had to like primp it and give it a good spritz with something.
So this actually might be his hair.
Funny you should mention it.
Well, the hair on the side is his hair.
I guess his hair never really was blonde. It was just
no, but it was definitely a much lighter brown.
Brown.
Yeah.
That's interesting though because movie Kirk, this guy, what's his name, Pine.
Mm-hmm. Chris Pine.
Yeah. He's just
blonde.
got straight up blonde hair.
Well, that's also partly the lighting in that scene. But yes, his hair is much, much lighter than Shatner's ever was.
To go back to Ames's point about straightening the hair, this is sort of a segue into straightening of hair, because one of the things that I noticed about this film that I loved was Lieutenant Uhura has a fucking bitchin' afro in this movie. And I looked into it while we were watching the movie, because I had not realized. It's actually funny. I don't remember what prompted this, but I did a search for the motion picture. Why did I do that?
I don't remember to be honest.
I don't either, but anyway, that was the first time I'd actually seen a picture of the movie uniforms was this morning, and I was like, what the fuck?
She did not believe they were as bad as I'd been saying they were.
Well, no, again, I believed you. It's just that, my mind pictured something bad, and the truth was so much worse. It wasn't that I didn't believe you, it's just that I couldn't stretch my imagination far enough to encompass. But at any rate, the one great thing, in my opinion, that happened with this movie in terms of costumes and whatever, is Uhura was rocking this sweet-ass afro. And it was her real afro, and it turns out that she actually kind of fought for it.
Oh, nice.
And earlier tonight, I was looking it up online to find out, just typed into Google literally, was Uhura rocking her own natural hair in Star Trek The Motion Picture, and that brought me to a Tumblr called TrekkieFeminist.tumblr.com, just Trekkie Feminist, boldly going where no feminist has gone before, and they have this great quote that I'm going to read from Nichelle Nichols, and it says, I was one of the first black women in the country, more years ago than I care to remember, who wore an afro outside in public. This was way before Star Trek. I wore one of the biggest afros in New York, but I wore it with Dior and Chanel suits. One of the other persons who was the first to wear an afro, but she cut it very short, was Cicely Tyson. But when it came time to do the Star Trek movie, I had to fight for that afro. It was nothing against the afro, but the feeling was that the afro had become so very popular that it looked too contemporary. I said, however, the afro is not modern. The afro has been around for at least, not less than 5,000 years, and probably at least 10,000. I'm not sure how long we've been on the planet, but as long as there have been black people, the afro has been around. Then they said, well, it can't be the big bubble, so let's try to get a more Uhura style. I said, what are you going to do, deny her race and make her hair straight again? If we're going to have to live through that again, they assured me that what they had in mind was more of a balance, and we agreed. We said, okay, women in the future will do all kinds of things as they have in the past. For 5,000 years and more, they've straightened their hair and curled it and rolled it and twisted it and braided it and twirled it and shaved it off and done everything under the sun. And so in the future, it's very conceivable that just as we do today, black people will do these twirly curl kind of things and point their bangs, and this would be peculiar to Uhura, the pointed bangs and long sideburns. I think this is funny, too. To tell the truth, I really wanted cornrow braids. And don't you dare call them Bo Derek braids. That's something that we've been doing for thousands of years before she was born. And this was apparently I think it's from a film, Return to Tomorrow, the filming of Star Trek The Motion Picture. And I just thought that was great.
Get it, girl.
Because, I think this rings true today. It's, again, for me, Star Trek being very progressive. Even in this really shitty movie. Because even now, people are getting shit for wearing their natural hair in public, be it afros or doing braids is against a lot of school dress codes and all this kind of shit. And, Nichelle, we've talked about this before, very famously had this conversation with Martin Luther King Jr. about it's really important that you stay on the show because it proves that, we have a place in the future. And then I feel like she fought hard for traditional black culture. And I just think that's fucking awesome. So for me, that's one of the bright spots in this otherwise not excellent film.
Although now I almost wish she'd had the cornrows, because that's kind of great, too. I don't think we've had cornrows in Star Trek.
Well, maybe Discovery will boldly go. As long as they don't...
They'll fuck it up and give it to Jason Isaacs.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to this, though. Yeah. Sorry, we got a little off course. But that's a great story about Nichelle Nichols there fighting for natural hair.
Good on her.
And you can tell
it is a kind of a shame that she has to fight for every fucking thing she does in this show.
Yes.
But it's good that she does it, too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'm glad that she does it.
Yeah. I do wish they'd let her just go full big afro, though. But they did, like you said, they clearly did sort of shave down the sides a little so it would look... It's a futuristic afro!
Still, it was sexy, though. The first...
Yeah.
She was... that like, especially with these drab-ass, ugly costumes, one of the first things with her just having her beautiful hair, I was just like...
It's just a shame she wasn't in a better uniform.
Or a better movie. I mean, frankly, like...
I mean, it could have... I'll admit, I haven't watched this in a long time, and it's better than I remembered. But it does just feel like, oh god, guys, one more edit.
Yeah, I mean,
if it had gone through the editing, it would have been fine because the story is fine. Yes, the script
is repetitive,
and I'm sure like most of that was the fault of them not having it fucking written until last second.
Yeah.
Or and them not getting all the opticals ready until last second, and not getting the music ready until last.
Well,
second.
and even I guess from what I read in that Omni article, like a lot of the uniform work was being done last second too. I mean, costuming, not just
Didn't
uniforms.
you say that he was working on that shit for like 10 months though?
Yeah, but like some of the finished work wasn't. There was points where they were overlapping with production. So, like, they were just barely keeping ahead of the filming schedule, he said.
We talked about that, I think, when you wrote the article initially. Didn't we talk about, like, no, I'm even thinking the original series. Like, getting the wrong color fabric and having to dye a lot of shit. Was that the motion picture, or was that TOS? Oh, damn. All right. Never mind. I was incorrect.
It's okay.
Yeah, I wanted to see... Because there are a number of Phase 2 scripts that eventually got made into...
TNG episodes.
Yeah.
I'm curious which of those they were, and if any of them would have been a better fit for a movie. Because I always kind of felt that Encounter at Farpoint, which is the pilot for TNG, could have been.
I mean, this is one of my big differences between a television series and a movie is. Like a television series, you watch it in your living room, you watch it, in an evening or something, whenever it's slotted, because at that time they didn't, have fucking Netflix.
Yeah, you didn't have binge watching back then.
You didn't DVR things to watch later. What is it, Jake?
I was gonna say since this since we were also kind of talking about Phase 2 in this episode, I do you guys mind if I talk about some of the scripts for Phase 2 that?
Please.
So
for once, it won't be me talking.
So I'm just going through Memory Alpha on my phone right now.
And for once, Jake talking will not be poop jokes.
It will.
Give it time.
You've been good. In the first episode that was written, it was nothing but poop.
Yes.
There. Sorry about that.
All right. So here's some of the episodes. So In Thy Image, which eventually was made into is what was the basis for the motion picture. Here's another one. Tomorrow in the Stars, reminiscent of The City on the Edge of Forever. Kirk falls in love with a woman on Earth at the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
I'm not even going to finish reading the synopsis of that one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Does he have to let her get hit by a truck or what?
Via bomb.
Good point.
The child, in the story, Ilea was mysteriously impregnated and within days gave birth to a baby girl, Urska, who appeared to be fully Deltan. A curious alien life form wished to study the crew, but her presence threatened the ship.
Doesn't that actually become a TNG episode?
It sounds very familiar. I can't remember. Oh, actually, yeah, that's exactly a TNG episode called The Child. It's actually the name of the TNG episode. Except I think it's been so long. That's a terrible episode. I think it was Troy that was in it.
Troy got mysteriously pregnant?
I can't remember how it went, but...
Riker.
All right. Here's another
Riker,
one.
who's Decker Part 2.
Oh, goodness. Cassandra, about a clumsy yeoman and a tiny, trouble-causing creature intended to have joined the ranks among such comedy episodes as The Trouble with Tribbles and A Piece of the Action.
Oh, boy, you would have loved that one, Ames.
I'm not gonna lie.
Great.
That sounds fucking terrible.
Did it make it into TNG?
No, that one's not a TNG episode. I don't think.
Or made it into the
there's
trash
certainly
can.
goofy, stupid TNG
Actually,
episodes.
that became the basis for Neelix's character.
Stop trashing Neelix.
Never.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, but man, his costumes are...
Let's see, what else we get here?
That's not
Another
his
one,
fault.
I know, but... Ugh.
Practice in Waking. In this tale, the Enterprise found a sleeper ship with only one passenger. Upon beaming over to investigate, Decker, Scotty, and Sulu discovered a woman in suspended animation. Scotty inadvertently touched the control panel, and 3 officers collapsed to the deck, only to reawaken in ancient Scotland without any memories of their lives aboard the starship. They met the same woman and protected her from mobs who accused her of being a witch. Back in the Enterprise, McCoy determined that the landing party's life signs were becoming progressively weaker. His prognosis was that the longer the trio remained in their dreaming state, the closer they came to dying. So Kirk and his crew had to somehow awaken them before they drifted off into a final sleep.
Did they do, like, True Love's Kiss or...
Yeah.
Scotch?
All right, Deadlock built a portrait of Starfleet gone mad, practicing mind control techniques on its personnel, lying and experimenting upon them by altering their perceptions of reality. However, there was another explanation for what Kirk and his crew experienced, leading to a scene in which Kirk defended humanity to a group of aliens. That just sounds like the B-plot in Farpoint with Q.
Or the fucking plot of Magics of Megas 2.
The Savage Syndrome, not the Savage Curtain,
Nope.
Savage Syndrome, featured a technology that unleashed dark urges repressed in humans. Okay.
So, sort of yet another take on space madness.
Or,
But it's dark urges instead of just wacky urges.
But also kind of The Enemy Within or whatever it's called.
Yeah. The Double Kirk episode, yeah.
Are Unheard Melodies Sweet?
These
That's the
fucking
title?
titles.
That's the title.
Is it Sweet SWEET or Sweet
Sweet.
WSI?
No, sweet as in tasty. It called for nudity and suggestive situations that probably would not have been filmed, let alone allowed to air.
Written by
Gene Roddenberry.
No, written by Worley Thorne.
Oh, okay.
Gene Roddenberry's pen name.
I was about to say that.
Yet the story was a standard Star Trek adventure with the Enterprise once again being trapped in a failing orbit without dilithium, while an alien race attempted to capture the crew.
Being fair, there could not possibly be a more Star Trek motion picture than that Star Trek motion picture.
Devil's Due. In the story, the Enterprise made first contact with the planet Natara, just as a mythical creature who had sold the planet in exchange for peace millennia ago appeared. That actually is a TNG episode.
Oh, yeah, I think I've seen that one.
It's actually, it's a silly one, but it's
More
fine.
like Devils Don't.
But, yeah. I'll just tell you what happened. I won't tell you what happened. We'll get to that when we get to TNG. Lord Bobby's Obsession.
How many episode storylines were there?
13.
Oh, my.
So Lord Bobby's Obsession was written by, blah, blah, blah. The Enterprise came across a derelict Klingon cruiser with one life form aboard. One Lord Bobby from Earth's 18th century.
Is it secretly Trelane?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this just Gothos
I
Part
hope.
2? Because that's what it
It
sounds
doesn't
like.
sound like it was ever finished.
Yo, why didn't Gothos wind up in any of the fucking movies?
That'd be cool.
This is some bullshit.
They kind of cue eventually.
They should bring Gothos back for the next Star Trek Kelvin timeline episode, movie rather. Oh, Ames, you'd have to see it then.
I mean, I still see the Kelvin movies.
right.
I just don't like
Who
movies
could
as much
play
as I like
Gothos?
television.
Who could play Gothos now?
Oh, I don't. I also don't know actors.
You know what they would
names
probably do?
Or
They'd-
faces.
I bet it'd be Tom
lives.
Hiddleston.
I don't even know who that is.
Tom Hiddleston because
I don't think they can
He plays
afford
Loki.
Tom Hiddleston.
I don't know. They got Benedict Cumberbatch.
That's true.
So yeah, there's a couple other ones here, but oh boy.
Mike Myers is
Some of these don't have actual synopses. They're just titles for scripts that were pitched. So I'll just read those real quickly. Ghost Story, Merlin's Magic,
Oh,
Ghost.
fuck's sake.
Paradise Lost, The Prisoner. That's it.
Who is number one?
Yeah, who is number
Almost
one?
all of those
Who are
titles
number
sound like they
6?
could have been really bad fan fiction as well.
Yeah, or just shitty novels.
Wow.
God. I think we should all be grateful Phase 2 didn't happen.
But didn't one of the fan-produced series that they've done, isn't one of them Star Trek Phase 2? I feel like.
I mean, they probably took the title, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if they used any of the
I
script
wonder
for
if
Phase
they
2.
did. I know that
Hopefully they fixed them if they did.
some of those fan-produced ones, I've seen one, and the acting was mostly what you'd expect for like an unprofessional, like an amateur production. The production
So,
quality,
but
though,
still better than Shatner, or
yeah, can't say.
Star Trek the Motion Picture. The last thing that I wanted to mention about Star Trek the Motion Picture is that when I know we saw Isaac Asimov's name is in, the credits somewhere as, some kind
Science advisor.
consultant type. You guys are like, Isaac Asimov. I said, I looked that up because apparently at the beginning when they were working on this stuff, there was a big controversy over the machine intelligence concept that's at the fucking root of the entire fucking story of would intelligence be able to get this advanced that it would essentially turn into sentient life. And all the producers and all the people at Paramount are like, guffaw, this is silly and nonsense, until they ask Isaac Asimov, as someone who writes a lot on this stuff, like, do you think this is, a logical turn of events that could possibly happen? And he's like, yeah, I write this all the time, and it makes a lot of scientific sense. And they're like, we still don't know. We're still not sure if this is a thing that would work. Until almost at the same time, just coincidentally, an article in Penthouse comes out interviewing NASA director Robert Jastrow, or Jastro, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. I think it's Jastrow.
No idea.
Talking about artificial intelligence, like that kind of stuff, and machines and science. And they're like, oh, okay, we just happen to be reading Penthouse and we realized this, so yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Wow.
I'm sure they only get it for the articles.
They actually read the articles. Good for them. I'm sure they did other things with it, but good for them.
Okay, but here's the thing, and I don't mean any disrespect to Isaac Asimov, but he was a fucking sci-fi writer. Who cares what his opinion is?
Sci-fi, that's the other thing. Like, sci-fi isn't fucking fantasy. Sci-fi has a lot of basis in fact and philosophy.
Yeah, good science fiction is written by people who research actual science before they write it.
Well, sure, but I mean...
Yeah,
I mean, Asimov was one of the better ones. Arthur C. Clarke was actually a scientist.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's one thing to be a science fiction writer and having gone to a library and read some stuff. It's a totally different thing to be, like, a NASA official person whose job is actually this stuff. I don't know, I just feel like... I'm not saying you couldn't take Isaac Asimov's word for it. I'm just saying, like, especially back... I think now it's a little cooler and more okay to be a science fiction nerd, but I'm guessing back then that it was even less acceptable than it was when we were kids. Like, I feel like probably the stuff of, like, nerds who live in their mom's basements probably back then. I don't know. Maybe they just thought Isaac was a basement nerd. I have no idea.
I mean, what the fuck do studio executives know?
Hugely famous person.
Yeah, like...
Isaac Asimov? Yeah, of course.
Studio executives are some of the dumbest motherfuckers on the planet. They always have been. They always will be. They are ignorant, ass-backwards, head up their fucking tuchus jackwits.
Yes. And that's
Isaac Asimov's word, you jumped up morons, and then go do your cocaine.
Yeah, that's why I brought up, like, at the beginning of this episode, like, how many fucking iterations of TV and movie and back to TV series and back to movie this had to go through to be a thing, because you get stuck in all the executive production bullshit.
What I don't get, though, is of all of the fucking things that they're going to be, like, incredulous about.
That's the problem.
That's the thing.
Oh, shit.
No, they're totally into, wait, so we get this Ilia probe, and she's just like a woman, and even her eyeballs have moisture? Humana.
Did you know what that implies?
They made a specific point to bring it up, that she's just like a woman.
Fucking hell.
Vagina.
I don't know. For me, the most ridiculous thing about this movie is that the Enterprise, the ship that is in space dock being refitted, is the only ship anywhere around Earth.
Yeah.
Yo, space is real fucking big.
Yeah, but Earth is the fucking headquarters of Starfleet.
So everybody's out on mission.
I don't know,
I don't buy it.
They intercepted Spock on the way.
No, Spock intercepted them.
Oh, yeah, Spock intercepted
that's
them.
That's another thing is bullshit, because they were way off course having gone through the wormhole, and yet somehow Spock gets there.
In his little tiny shuttle.
Well, then, I mean, look...
What happens to that shuttle? Because he hooks up and then they keep going. Did they leave the little...
Well, the warp is gone.
I think there was probably another person on board.
Yeah, there was a crew. It was definitely heading back to relink with the nacelles.
Yes,
that makes
I
sense.
would like to point out...
Whoa.
I have to... I have a bone to pick with you, Star Trek the Motion Picture, so-called Star Trek. I have a major qualm about the scene in which Spock returns to the Enterprise. I believe that you have made an error, because when his shuttle approaches and docks with the Enterprise, it docks on Deck 1, immediately behind the bridge. It is seen from the outside of the ship.
Yep.
He then enters the ship. He is greeted by Chekhov.
Yep.
And then it cuts to Spock entering the bridge from the elevator. Alone. So did he go downstairs and then back upstairs to the bridge?
And then suddenly Chekhov is on the bridge, cut later?
And then Chekhov is on the bridge, having never entered.
Yeah.
What happened, Star Trek? Now, I'm going to say that perhaps the turbo lift has 2 positions on Deck 1.
Okay, yeah.
One to the docking ring and one to they can whip around. But still, that just seems impractical. Why don't you just have a door from the docking shuttle dock
Yeah.
area.
Why have it docked to the bridge?
That's
in the
true.
First
That seems a
place?
bad idea.
That seems like a bad idea.
Also, earlier, when Kirk and Scotty docked, they did not dock to the bridge.
No, they docked to engineering.
Yeah.
Well, Scotty had to go to engineering, and Scotty's
True.
more important.
Well,
Apparently.
But keep in mind, Ames, this is a fleet that puts its bridges on top of a giant saucer when they could very well put it deep within any other part of the ship and not make it a gargantuan target.
True.
Starfleet design has never really relied on logic.
the elevator thing sort of makes sense, though, because we did comment during the film on the fact that the placard outside of the elevator seems to suggest that it goes front ways and sideways and up ways and down ways.
And the snozzberries taste like snozzberries.
I've heard that.
I still think that having
a door.
having a door would have been
Well,
fine.
but maybe there's some kind of weird, like, environmental breach situation where they don't want you to, like, connect your spaceship to a big hole in the ship.
That's
and
true.
just
Why have that by the bridge at all?
And just have a flimsy door between the two. Like, maybe there's, like, a reason.
Also, if you've got a ship, a long-range shuttle you've specifically designed yourselves, why not just design it in such a way that it can hook up with another ship without having to jettison its fucking nacelles? None of this makes sense.
Nope.
The position of the dock, the design of the fucking shuttle. Yeah.
Do you think Spock got in trouble later for zonking that guy out
Of course not. He's Kirk's fucking best friend.
I don't know why.
When he was in his space block.
When he stole a spacesuit. Why didn't he just walk in and be like, "Ensign, I'm taking a spacesuit.
Yeah, really.
I am your commanding officer, so see ya."
Yeah, that's true.
It's probably
Even Decker was fine with him calling the shots. You would think.
Yeah, Decker. Man, Kirk must have felt like shit. Because he stole Decker's job and Decker was all mad. And then Spock comes and steals Decker's new job and Decker's like, no, it's cool. Spock's great.
I've heard about Spock. He's awesome. Kirk's like, you son of a bitch.
You know what's super, super funny? Stephen Collins, who played Decker, wasn't cast until a week before filming.
Who the fuck was playing Decker before that?
Nobody.
Oh, Jesus. What a shit show.
They had no idea what to do with him.
They couldn't get any other famous pedophiles? Jeffrey Jones was busy, or...
Wow.
I can't imagine. Can you imagine Jeffrey Jones in that part? That'd be great.
Hopefully with his fucking Ferris Bueller's Day Off mustache.
That's another thing we didn't point out is that this film had an overture.
It did.
Which is something you don't see on films.
No.
Ever.
I mean, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever written for any Star Trek ever, but it is weird.
Yeah, what was it?
Like how there's a qualification. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever written for Star Trek.
But don't worry, I just don't want to take away from the fact that it is a very, very lovely piece of music.
Oh no, the music's gorgeous.
But it's bizarre. Like
No, and
usually,
it's like 2 minutes long.
yeah, like
It's
usually.
like, what are you doing?
When a movie
people filing
opens-
in, eating popcorn. What's going on now?
Yeah, like usually, there was definitely a trend in the 70s of like 70s film adaptations of musicals to have an overture.
yeah, Scrooge did.
Scrooge did, Fiddler on the Roof, various. I think Oliver.
Did Hateful Eight have a?
Oh, I don't remember.
It might have, and like if you
Overture?
did the whole big 70mm like
Which we
roadshow
did.
version, I think it
I
did.
just can't. I did
Well, they
too.
definitely had an intermission,
Yeah.
right? Because I
Yeah.
remember
That's
the
what this
curtains
movie could have
closing.
used.
Yeah.
Intermission.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
put
people wouldn't come
music
back.
there. Yeah.
2001 had an intermission.
We built in our own intermission, remember?
Yeah. But it's a little weird for a non-musical to have an overture, especially since I remembered there being a Starfield at least, but no, it was just a black screen.
Starfield would have been better.
Or even just like the fucking logo, anything, something.
Here's another thing about this movie that I think, and about a lot of movies at that era, is that probably between the time of this movie and Star Trek II, one big thing was the explosion of home video.
VCRs came around between then and...
I mean, VCRs came out in the 70s, but they probably weren't.
Oh, I thought they got big. I thought it was the 80s. You're probably
Well,
right.
they became big in the 80s.
That's probably when they got affordable for more
Like,
people.
yeah, like people like Betamax was probably out, I think, by the late 70s. VHS may have been out, but again, it was before the format wars, and it was most people probably didn't have VCRs at home, and home movies or home video, I should say, was probably not as big a thing as it became in the 80s. So the filmmakers of this movie were really anticipating creating something that people would likely experience once in the theater.
Yeah.
So having an overture, like if you think about that in the sense of like going to the theater,
Yeah.
lights go down, total dark theater, overture starts and you get 2 minutes of overture, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's weird when you're sitting at home in your living
Yeah.
room and that happens, but, you know.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
And, like, I can also understand why they, in some ways, would do those long effect shots, because, again, it's a spectacle thing, you know?
Yeah.
For the people watching it in the theater at the time, it was all probably pretty fucking incredible, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think also part of it, though, was probably spurred to an extent by Star Wars, though, for the effect shots. It was like, Star Wars had all these effects in it, they're like, you know, the executives were probably like, wait, there's no, like, big little space battles? It's like, no, it's Star Trek, you idiots.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Fuck.
I think they probably were like, oh, we have to have all these effect shots, and no one realized that, oh, the reason why Star Wars had so many effect shots is because it's an action fantasy set in space.
Not a...
It's got wars right in the title.
Yeah, this really isn't...
It's
When
a
Star
trek.
Trek...
This is more of a trek than a war.
Well, and when...
Trek's more like
And,
a
like,
slog.
you know, Star Wars...
Oh, there's
Star-
your title.
Star Wars action mostly is based on, like, old footage of, like, World War II
Yeah, oh yeah, like
dogfights and
dogfighting, yeah.
other aerial battles. When Star Trek does space battles, it's based on submarine films.
Okay.
It's a very different kind of battle.
All right, so let's just talk about the battles, the space battle. There's some great space battles in this film. There's a great battle between the Klingons and a cloud. Later, there's a great battle between the Enterprise and a potato.
Don't forget about that great scene between a cloud and a space station.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Riveting.
Well, they don't fire weapons though, so I mean, I'm thinking just like scenes when weapons get used. The Klingons kick the shit out of that cloud.
They do. Oh, and the Enterprise fires on an asteroid.
Well, that was
That was
Oh, was that the
Potato.
potato?
Wait,
Son of a
don't
bitch,
forget
you're right.
There was the battle between Ilea and the medical bay door.
Oh God!
I forgot about that.
Off screen though,
Yeah,
so
true.
we just
Hear
turn
a
with
noise.
You hear a noise, and we turn back and
You
see
see,
it burst
like
through
you
the
see
door.
the slightest bit of it because they had to film that like 3 times
Oh my
because they
God,
couldn't
of
find
course
the
they
right
did.
material of door to
And
have
then
her
they
punch
just
through.
didn't. And then they did it off screen anyway.
You could see a little bit of it on screen.
But totally not worth it. Like
No.
they could have
No.
just had it off screen at that point.
Was it just fucking blurry like everything else in this movie?
Yeah, some of the
Yeah.
cinematography choices
They
were
did some
bizarre.
interesting things. They
Yeah,
use
like
a
not
lot of
cleaning the lenses.
They use a lot of split focus lenses
did.
where you had like normally a lens has one focal point so you can focus on either something that's close or something
far.
that's far away.
Yep.
But they kept using ones where they would have a foreground actor in focus, and then in the background right behind him would be out of focus, and then the other half of the frame was the background in focus. And there's
yeah,
this
someone in the background.
Usually the 5-head.
well, that's the thing. There's this weird scene at the beginning where you have Kirk, and it's really shallow depth of field on Kirk, so
Yep.
like his nose is in focus,
Yep.
and everything else is out of focus. And then the other half of the shot is a completely, perfectly crisp
Yeah.
shot of Fivehead just standing around in the background.
So called because he had lots and lots and lots of foreheads. For
just-
anybody not.
I mean, that was part of
We're
the.
not making fun of
people.
people with 5 heads.
No, he was an alien. He was
Yeah.
supposed to be
Yeah,
one
he
of
was
the
meant to
aliens.
have a lot of
Yeah.
He was
foreheads.
meant to look like he had lots
Like
of.
if you have a
brain.
5 head or even a 6 head, I have the utmost respect for you.
I mean, I'm slowly growing a 5 head, what with my hairline receding very quickly. But
Exactly.
so, like, tonally, those sorts of shots just don't serve the film either. They just seem... I feel like when you usually see those sort of weird split-focus shots, I think of that in terms of, like, you know, almost Hitchcockian thriller. Or some sort of weird tense moment. This is just used for conversations. Mm-hmm. And it seems to be trying to establish an atmosphere that just didn't exist. But again, there were cinematography issues here. Because again, the models weren't always lit right. It was bizarre. Like, they really wanted to be way fancier than they had the skill or budget or something for. I don't know. It's not a disaster. It's much better than I remember it being. But it's almost frustrating because you can see how with just a little bit of extra work, if things weren't being so rushed, if they'd had a better edit, it could have been better.
Well, so speaking of edits, I've often heard the legend. I don't know if it, like that. Supposedly, this might be an urban legend, but I've heard it before. Topher Grace of that '70s show fame
And
Yes,
Spider-Man 3.
I've heard of this too.
made a fan edit of Star Wars Episode 1, I think, right?
So he supposedly has compressed 1 through 3 into a single, slightly long movie.
That makes sense.
That makes sense and works a lot better.
So what we need is Topher Grace to do a fan edit.
There we go.
Of Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Let's email his people.
Let's do it. Let's make
Why
it
not?
happen.
Why don't we just do it?
Toph, if you're listening,
We know he's a fan.
But we really wanted you to do a fan edit of this movie for us.
Could you fix it a little?
Yeah.
Oh, and maybe if you can, this might be harder, but if you could fix, there's this one scene in engineering where the background noise in engineering
Yeah, that was dumb.
is in the forefront and you can barely make out the
That
speech.
might just be the bad mix.
That's what I mean, the mix is shit. If you can fix that somehow, if you can get your hands on like the original audio files.
You know, here's the thing though. I doubt that this was ever mixed in surround sound until it was put on DVD.
True.
'Cause I
So
don't
maybe
think- I
just
don't know.
listening to it in stereo, it would have worked
Yeah,
better.
possibly.
Maybe.
Like they probably did a weird mix when they remastered it.
And they tried
for
to
surround sound.
5-1.
Yeah, that scene was annoying though.
Yeah.
With that, this has been episode 50
Wow.
of A Star to Steer Her By. Do please find and like our Facebook page, A Star to Steer Her By. We are also on Twitter and Tumblr as SSHB Podcast. Do please subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting application. And if you have or use iTunes, do please consider giving us a little rating and review. Next week, we will be looking at the big one, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. For A Star to Steer Her By, this has been Chris.
This has been Ames.
This has been Caitlin.
And this is always Jake.
Thank you very much for listening.
We forgot to mention Yeoman Rand!
Oh wow, we've gone almost 2 hours.
I
Yeah,
fucking told you guys
We can
it'd be a
cut it
long
much.
episode. Y'all were like, oh, it'll be a normal episode. I was like, well, I bet it won't.
Well,
But
there'll
it
be
is-
lots to cut.
Either way, it is potentially...
Nope, just do it like the motion picture. Leave everything in there. In fact, if you can find a way to slow down our speech in some of the
Actually,
We're
scenes-
going through a wormhole.
Actually, here's what you should do: is before normally you open the episode with "Hello and welcome to Star
Yeah,
Wars
yeah.
Cinema." Play our theme song, but play the entire composition.
That's a great idea.
I think that's approximately 10 to 15 minutes, yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
actually please do that?